Judd said that's not fair. I care, Mary.
Hey.
Meeting will come to order. Welcome to the 2021 budget presentation. Like so many things this year, it's going to be a little different than what we're used to. One constant that has not changed is that your POA senior staff and all POA employees have continued to strive to make Bella Vista Village the best experience for all members as they are able. At the beginning of the budget process, there are many projects and amenity improvements proposed by the senior staff. Some of these make it through the process, and some are put on the back burner for another time. What our COO, Tom Judson, will present tonight is the result of many hours of hard work and give and take between departments. It is a balanced budget that starts to get us back to reinvesting in our infrastructure and enhancing the lives of our members. Tom?
Good evening, everybody. We're appropriately spaced out here in the boardroom, so I've taken my mask off so I can speak clearer. Thank you for joining us if you're viewing from home. There's a lot of information, so we're going to try and hold our questions till the end. We also have select questions from Facebook will be asked, and a moderator will ask those. For those live streaming, watching this on Facebook, you can access tonight's presentation and the packet. And I'm going to show you where. If you go to the Bella Vista website, you can see on that first arrow to the right, the members' resources, and then click on the bottom where it says reports, budgets, and financials. And then you'll see on the left-hand side, it'll say 2020 budget, and you can get this entire presentation, and you can also get the packet. I first wanted to take a moment and introduce our board members. First off, we have David Brandenburg. He is our chair.
Thank you.
We have Mary Sinkus, our vice chair.
Good evening.
We have Mike Abb, which I'm not certain if Mike Abb, we have a large number of board members zooming in. We have Mike Abb.
I'm here, thank you.
Fantastic. Jerry Barron Jr. is here live in the boardroom. We have Tia Bedwell.
Hi, good evening.
Sandy Fosdick. And Jerry Hover.
Hello, and thank you all for being with us tonight.
Jan Sims. And David Welchel.
Thank you, Tom. Good to be here.
And here is our senior staff. I'm not going to introduce all of those. It would take far too long. But you can see each of the individual people that's in charge of their respective departments. And you'll notice as we go along and we look at the respective financials, it'll have their name on the top. We don't want to make sure very clearly who's accountable for making that budget. The board tentatively plans to vote on this budget next week, next Thursday, November 19th at 6 p.m. So here is, first we're going to talk about the 2020 plan. We're going to go backwards. We made some commitments, and we wanted to make sure that all the commitments that were made, we are fulfilling. So the first commitment was $6 would be used to eliminate or reduce amenity fees. That amounts to just a little over $1 million. And when you look at tonight's, the presentation of tonight's financials for golf, recreation, and lakes, you'll see that their revenue has gone down by quite a bit because that money is now moved over to assessments. But also keep in mind that our utilization is way up, so you may not see the entire $1 million because it's kind of hidden by the increase in the utilization. But what's most important is that the fees are either reduced or eliminated as promised. $2 was promised to go to the Trafalgar Fire. That commitment is $348,000, and we have $360,000 that we have budgeted for legal fees. $4 will go towards operational costs and capital improvements. That account amounts to $696,000. And we have a capital budget of $898,000, so you see that we far exceed that number. And the last one is $1 is going to go to reserves, which is $174,000. And in the budget, when we go through it, you'll see that $174,000. So we wanted to start off and make sure that everybody was aware that the board is fulfilling the commitments that were made with the 2020 plan. All right, let's get into the budget. So here's the operating budget. Tonight we're going to talk about 3 different budgets: the operating budget, the capital budget, and the cash flow budget. Cash flow budget, sometimes called the financial budget. We're going to use 4 different criteria, 4 columns. We're going to look at the 2019 actuals, the trailing 12, which would give us 12 full months, but they cross over years. So it's going to go September 2019 through August 2020. We're going to show you the 21 budget and then the delta, or the change between the trailing 12 and the 21 budget. Now keep in mind, when you're looking at the 2019 actuals, keep in mind that we had to make some severe cutbacks because of the Trafalgar Fire. And then 2020, in the trailing 12, we had to make cutbacks because of COVID. So those 2 years, I'm giving you 2 years to compare to, but just keep in mind that both of those years are impacted by large events. All right, so here's how you're going to read it. You're going to see, we're going to use the pointer for the first time. You're going to see here's the first column. Here's your 2019 actuals. Your trailing 12 is next, your budget, and then your delta. And that's how we're going to present every single department. Just want to make sure everybody is clear what they need to look at. All right, I'm going to give everybody a real quick sneak peek to see how everything, when it comes together in the simple cash flow budget, what it looks like, and then we're going to build the budget from the bottom up, department by department. You'll see net income is actually going to increase for the year. Cost of sales is going to go up a little bit. Operating expenses is going to go up a little bit. But you're going to see that our EBITDA is going to increase quite a bit from one year to the next. Now look back here. This was impacted, 2019 was impacted by putting out the Trafalgar Fire, and you can see those expenses right there. That's a big number impacting it. But you'll see that when we compare these 2 columns, we have a large increase. And we also have allocations, capital projects, water, paying back the water loan, and reserves. And I'm going to go into all these in more detail. And at the very bottom, you'll see we have a positive, simple cash flow of $95,000. And by board policy, we must have a positive cash flow, as we do. All right, now we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about employee payroll, because that seems to be an item that a lot of people like to talk about. So payroll is going up, and 3 major issues impacted payroll and made it go up. First of all, minimum wage increased to $11 an hour. This impacted many departments, but not all the departments, like golf, food and beverage, and so forth were impacted. Food and beverage was not impacted. Recreation was, think of lifeguards and so forth. Some rec people, but when you look at like MAC and water, they were not impacted by that increase. We're proposing a 3% increase for all staff. In 2020, this year, we only had a 1.6% increase for our hourly staff and 0 increase for salary. Now, when I talk about the 3%, it does not mean it's across the board that every single employee gets 3%. It's still merit-based. There will be some employees that will get a little bit more because they're really performing well, and there's some employees that may not get a full 3% because they're struggling. And then lastly, we were not fully staffed this year. If you recall, we closed the restaurants for extended periods. We closed the gyms for extended periods. So we had closures throughout, and that brought down labor, but also we made major cutbacks. For example, in golf maintenance, we hardly had any seasonal staffing. So in 2021, we're anticipating that we're going to be fully staffed the entire year. So all three of those things had a major impact on our labor. So I just wanted to point that out, didn't want to hide from it, wanted to be transparent about these increases. All right, now we're going to get into departmental reports. Now in your board packet, if you've printed it out, you'll notice that I've included a summary and detail. Last year when I did this presentation, I gave everybody a lot of detail and I got a lot of comments from property owners that I gave too much information and it got confusing. So we're going to give you a very thumbnail summary, but some people want more information. So in the packet, you're going to see the summary and the detail, both. You can choose which one you want to read through. But for this purposes, for the slide deck, we're sticking with the summary. All right, now also, you'll notice that when I come along to a particular department, you'll see it says page 3 up here in the top left-hand corner. So with your presentation packet, you can quickly go and say, okay, I'm going to find golf operations on page 3, and you can follow along at home. All right, let's get into golf operations. Now, first of all, I want to point out what's happening with rounds. So in 2017, we had a little over 55,000 rounds. In 18, it went down into the mid-40s, or actually the lower 40s. And then 2019, it was about 137,000, so clearly heading downhill rapidly. And in 2020, way up, way up. And there's two things that are contributing to that, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment, but you'll see that rounds are up year to date by 23,600. That's a 18.9% increase over prior year. Now, regionally, golf courses are reporting an increase of 12.5%. So you could probably assume that part of it is COVID that is increasing rounds, and part of it is the lowering the fees. How much each of them, how do you divide it up between those two factors? It's really hard to say. Also, I want to back up real quick. Revenue, you'll see in some is down, and that's because some of that revenue, because we lowered the fees and moved those over to assessments, and assessments go into general income. So I want to point that out. So if you look at it and you see that the revenue is going down, but the rounds are going up, why is the revenue going down, Tom, if the rounds are going up? Because we lowered the fees and we've transferred that revenue to another department. Okay. Another thing is free green fees. I want to point that out with an activity card at Brittany. It's been a huge success, and we want to recognize Jim Abrahamson. He was the board director who suggested this approach. We went from 6,300 rounds to 14,000 rounds in 2020. So that's very impressive. And what's also interesting is for that course for Brittany, our revenue, even though we have all these free rounds going through the course, our revenue for that course is actually up because all these members with an activity card that are playing for free are bringing their friends. And our revenue is actually up. This is the only department that may be negatively impacted once COVID subsides. Really hard to say. How much? Impossible to say. How quickly it'll happen? We know that some of the rounds have increased as a result of the fee reductions, but some of it is COVID. How much is one or the other? Impossible to tell. Also, labor. This department was probably impacted the most, $113,000 in 1 year because of the increase in minimum wage. And then expenses remained relatively flat. 2 capital projects, $22,000 for the Metfield parking lot paving. It's in poor shape. It needs work. And then at Metfield by the bank on 18, the bank is in poor condition and is no longer stable. That needs to be repaired. And here is the thumbnail summary. And as I said, if you go to your the budget presentation, which is available online on our website, you can get much more detail. But here you can see we have revenue, and we talked about the columns, 2019 actuals, trailing 12, the budget, and delta. And you'll see that revenue is going to go up compared to the trailing 12, but is falling short of 2019 when the fees were higher. You see the cost of sales is relatively stable, but you see that labor went up quite a bit, and we talked about labor earlier, and those reasons that the minimum wage is contributing a lot, and then expenses have stayed relatively flat. In fact, in this department, it went down a little bit. All right, the next one, and we're on page 5 of your packet. Next one is golf maintenance. So our goal for the coming year is to improve course conditions. I mentioned earlier that we did not have seasonal staff this year, or very few seasonal staff on the golf course, because we were cutting back because we didn't know what COVID would do to our overall financial position. So we made some major cutbacks, and you can see that in the quality of the golf course. For this 21 budget, we are staffing up to our regular levels, and so that's going to increase our labor because we want to make sure that we maintain our golf course at the appropriate level. 2020 was the first year in many years that all golf courses were open. Let's knock on wood that we don't have any floods in the coming year, or windstorms, or anything else. Okay, so labor increased. We talked about the seasonal staff and how we didn't hire a lot of people, and the quality of the golf courses was impacted. 3% increase. Minimum wage did impact approximately 13 positions, and we are going to add some additional hours to maintain the greens during the summertime, which is when they bake really, we need to maintain them and make sure we don't lose any greens. Expenses are going to decrease in this department. Wow, that's great. Well, it's a little bit of an aberration, because in previous years, in the trailing 12 and in 2019, we had the flood and we had windstorm damage, and those were large expenses of $300,000. So it's making it almost appear that in the 21 budget that our expenses are going down, but they're really not, because we are not planning on a flood. All right, we have several projects. We actually have 2 pages worth of projects or capital projects. So a capital project is a permanent improvement, and it's over $10,000. So we're going to get a root pruner for $22,000. That will help extend the life of our cart paths. Dogwood Pump House needs work. Country Club needs a top dresser. We're going to do some work on the red tee boxes at Highlands. This was the top priority for the golf committee. They really wanted to make sure. One of the other top priorities was the root pruner. We also need to get what we call a park mower for Birksdale. And then we need to do some creek work, $110,000. but we saw what happens at Scottsdale. When major flooding comes through, it can definitely impact our golf course, and we're trying to do preventative measures at the Country Club number 5 to stabilize that bank and make sure that we don't have any problems with that bridge down the road. Country Club, the red tee boxes. Now, the golf committee did ask that we do the red tee boxes at Scottsdale, but unfortunately we had to do some cutbacks. We had to do a lot of cutbacks to shoehorn ourselves into this budget, and that was one of them. We had committee members force rank them on the order of importance, and unfortunately Scottsdale was ranked the lowest out of 3. And then we have a replacement vehicle. The current vehicle has over 200,000 miles on it and is no longer reliable. So here's the thumbnail summary. Once again, the detail, you can get that in the board in the budget packet that's available on our website. And so you see that labor is going up quite a bit for the reasons that we talked about earlier, but expenses are going down, and that's kind of an aberration because of flooding. Because flooding and windstorms impacted 2019 and the trailing 12. So both of those numbers are skewed. All right, food and beverage, and we're on page 7. All right, so the food and beverage operation was impacted pretty significantly because of COVID. We had to close for extended periods. Well, we remained open, but we were doing curbside only. And we dropped down to as much as 40% of normal during those periods, and we've slowly built our way back up. Last 3 months in a row, we have exceeded EBITDA budget for food and beverage. So we're really getting back on our feet from being knocked off our feet for quite a number of months. We're optimistic, but keep in mind the biggest impact on food and beverage with regards to COVID is banquets and bar revenue. And if you were to ask us what is the most profitable portion of our F&B business, banquets, bar revenue. And that's where we're getting hit the most. So when, hopefully sooner than later, when COVID goes away, we should see a positive impact for our restaurants because we'll be able to do those large banquets, that's 150-person weddings, and the bars can be super busy during March Madness and so forth. That's what we're missing out on right now. Labor will increase in 21 because we're going to have a full year of operation. We were closed for extended periods. We didn't have any labor during those periods. So in 21, we're anticipating that we're going to be open for all 12 months. And you'll see that expenses are actually going to go down a little bit as we continue to improve our efficiency. So the numbers continue to improve. They're not where we want to be. So here's the next slide. All right, so the long-term perspective, the commitment that the board made to the community was that after 4 full years of operation for both of the restaurants, we would break even. 20 and 21, they don't count. They don't count towards that number. That's the facts, is because COVID has disrupted the business so significantly, those 2 years cannot count towards that timeline. All right, clubhouses. So clubhouses are, we have multiple buildings that are shared by multiple divisions. And as opposed to, and anybody that's heard me speak over the years, they know that I hate random allocations. So what we do is we take those expenses and we put them into clubhouses as opposed to randomly separating them out between divisions. So this department has utilities, taxes, insurance, maintenance, and repairs. There's no employees assigned to this department. Revenue is limited to the Kingsdale lease. And the expense will increase with a full year of operation. So once again, we had multiple facilities. So when the restaurants were closed, we turned the lights off. We saved power. Well, now we're anticipating for 21 that we're going to be open all year. And on the bottom, you'll see the elimination of allocations with web and data services and power. I am not a big fan of allocations when it's just randomly done. 2 capital projects here. 4 heat pumps that need to be replaced at Highlands. They're the old units. We have a lot of these older units, and we have to replace them, or else we're going to have to replace them all at one time. And these units are the oldest, and they need to go. We also need to repaint the exterior of the country club. We didn't do the exterior painting when we renovated this building. It hasn't been painted in over 13 years. It needs the work. And here is the thumbnail. And so you can see, here's that increase right here with that change in the allocation. But you see that nothing in labor, of course, and just a little bit in revenue for this department. All right, we're on page 11 of your packet. We're going to talk about maintenance and construction, the MAC division. So when we get to capital, you're going to see how we're going to actually be purchasing some new items, but we're also getting rid of some very large pieces of equipment, 2 bulldozers, service truck, 2 deck mowers. The bulldozers are no longer needed. The vast majority of the work up at the Highlands stump dump is just about done, and since we're not going to hopefully ever be in the stump dump business ever again, we don't need this heavy equipment anymore, so we're looking to sell this.
Keith got kicked out.
Oh, go for it. All right. Labor is going to increase with for the following reasons. 3% increase for the staff. We needed to let someone back in that got kicked out. And we will fill all vacancies that went unfilled because of COVID cutbacks. Remember, early on when COVID first hit, we cut out a huge amount of money from our budget because we didn't know how it was going to impact our business. As it works out, we've been doing very well this year. Expenses will increase modestly with the cost of fire extinguishers, fire suppression, and hood maintenance no longer allocated to other departments. Hey, Chris, it's no longer advancing. We had a little technical, sorry about that. Okay, here's the capital for MAC. We have $13,200 for replace an out front rotary deck. The existing unit is very old. We have a half-ton vehicle that needs to be replaced. $12,100 for a scissor lift, so we can safely get our employees up into high locations, and $75,000 for a mini excavator or a backhoe. That's a large item that needs to be replaced. And you'll see here is the thumbnail summary. We talked about the labor increase, and you'll see that expenses have gone up fairly modestly. And compare that all the way back to 2019, they're actually doing pretty well in that department. And look at the bottom line, overall dollars have not changed much from year to year, and EBITDA better there. Now here, look at the revenue here. With the sale of those large pieces of equipment, revenue is going to pop up quite a bit. If you recall, each September, approximately in September, we do those auctions, and we bring in quite a bit of money every year when we have a lot of equipment. And this coming year, we're going to have quite a bit. All right, on page 13 of your packet, we're going to look at lakes and parks. Our goal is to continue to maintain the lakes at a high level and purchase sufficient fish for our angling opportunities. We want to keep all those who fish, we want to keep them happy and provide enough fish in there. Revenue will increase as we anticipate more boat registrations in 21. There has been a consistent trend of boat registrations increasing over the last 5 years. It's been very, very impressive. Labor will increase. Minimum wage will contribute to the majority of the increase. We have the 3% increase, and then we're going to add a 4th ranger during the wintertime to make sure that we're patrolling sufficiently. And expenses will increase modestly, and we made sure that we included hybrid striped bass. We have some wood decking that needs, on docks and so forth, that needs work, and renovation of the trap house number 3 at the Skeet and Trap Range. It's the roof. All right, we have 2 projects there. We have to do paving at Brittany Dam. This is in very, very bad condition. It needs work. We need to replace 2 half-ton pickups or vehicles, and we're going to purchase used vehicles. Now, going back to the paving of the dam, we actually had 2 additional dams in the original budget, but we had to cut those out because of cost. So we know that all the dams need work on paving, but this is the only one that we could shoehorn into the budget. And here's the thumbnail, and you can see I talked about revenue going up a little bit, and then labor. We talked about the reasons why labor is going up, and expenses just a little bit up, so not too bad. All right, central administration, we're on page 15. Central admin is made up of myself, controller, and the corporate secretary. If you look at the 2000, I actually wrote this wrong. The sale of ARCMO is in 2019. It's not in the trailing 12. And you'll see that there's a net of $350,000. That's not what we sold it for. The net is the comparison between what we sold it for and the book value. All right. And then labor will increase by 3% for our staff and increase responsibilities for our controller and our corporate secretary. And expenses will decrease significantly, primarily as the result of not having any assessments votes. In the trailing 12, we had 2 assessment votes. This year, we won't. We will have, in the coming year, we'll have a board vote, but last year we had 2 assessment votes. So that helped quite a bit. And here is that increase in labor we talked about, and here is that decrease in expenses. So each vote is about between $40,000, $45,000. So you eliminate 2, that's $90,000, some other cost savings, and that's how we have that lowering of expenses in central administration. All right, general income. We're on page 17 of the packet. So I wanted to take a step back in time a little bit, and let's look at improved properties that are in good standing as of the first of each year. And you'll see that the first of the year on, way back in 17, we were a little over 13,200. Took a nice increase in 18, 19, 20, and here was where we're at. So we have a couple different things going on. We have a lot of construction going on in this area, and we have a collections department that's doing really good in making sure everybody that has an improved property is paying. So two different reasons why that is steadily increasing. So that has gone up about from 17 all the way to current. That's 1,000 additional properties paying at the higher level for improved properties. Here's the next one, unimproved. Well, if more improved properties are paying, wouldn't you expect to have a decrease in unimproved? Well, no, we're actually going the other direction. We're increasing because we have a very good legal department and a very good accounting department that goes after and makes sure that everybody that owns a property is paying. And so you'll see a steady increase in the number of people that are in good standing, and that's an increase of 1,000 also in that same period. So in that 4-year period, we have 2,000 more properties paying their assessments than 4 years ago. That is very impressive and compliments to the crew that is making it happen. Okay, general income is where our assessments go to. All right, Now, if you compare to 2019, well, the assessment increase is not in 19, and in the trailing 12, you only have 6 months of the increase. So it's a little bit challenging to do the comparison. Labor is up with 2 additional part-time employees to work on collections, because we are seeing that with COVID is that we need to work our accounts, especially the unimproved, a lot more than we previously had to do. We really have to work those accounts to keep them current. So we are adding the additional staff. We'd rather be proactive and stay on top of the problem than be reactive and it gets behind us. Because this is what we know. If a member is behind in their assessment by $100 or $200, it's much easier to get them current than when they're $400, $500, $600 behind. Once they get that far behind, it's very hard to get them current. So you hit them, you got to get them early, and they work really well with the staff. Okay, expenses will decrease significantly as a bulk of the cost of the remediation of the Trafalgar and the Highland site is behind us. Okay, we're still going to have legal fees for probably several more years to go. 3, 4, 5 more years we'll have large legal fees. But the cost to close those sites, the physical cost of earth moving and so forth, is behind us by and large. Okay? But we do have $360,000 in legal fees in there, and that was one of the we referenced that way earlier in the presentation about one of the commitments that we had, that we would be putting money towards the Trafalgar, and it is. All right, so here we go. So you see a large increase in revenue. Don't forget, 19, we didn't have the increase in the assessments. Trailing 12 only has 6 months of the increase. So there it is. And labor is going up. We talked about that, the two additional part-time people. And expenses are going down. Boy, look at that number over there. Putting out the fire was not cheap. And part of it is in here, and the closure of the Highland Stump Dump. So getting those 2 major events behind us, not legally behind us, but physically putting the stuff out and taking care of it, getting that behind us, that's a huge benefit. All right, human resources. Page 19 of the packet. Labor will increase 3% and expenses will remain very relatively constant. And here it is. Not a lot going on in that department, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on that one. All right, marketing and office services. What's office services? Well, we actually have couriers that go around and pick up things and deliver things to each, because we're spread out all over the map. And that falls under marketing, because nobody else would take that department, huh? All right. Our marketing will continue to work on overall POA awareness. Revenue is projected to go down by $10,000. This is the advertising for the magazines. So the Inside magazine that comes out quarterly and Connection that goes out monthly. Some of our smaller advertisers, because of COVID, they're struggling financially, and so that means that we have to work harder to get those advertisers. So we're anticipating a $10,000 drop. Labor will increase. Minimum wage doesn't impact the marketing portion, but it does impact the office services portion of this department, because most of those are at minimum wage, so forth. All right, and expenses will increase due to the following. Paper. We're doing a lot more printing, we're doing a lot more mailing, so forth. We're going to talk a little bit more about that later when we get to member services. And constant improvements to our website. You can't just do the website once and then just leave it. You have to be constantly improving the website. And here's the increases. So here's that $10,000 decrease in revenue we talked about. Here's that increase in labor. And here's the increase in the printing costs and those types of things. And so it has a net impact. But we're still less than 19, which is good. All right, legal. page 23 of your board packet. So we wanted to talk about, okay, so when we sell properties, when the POA gets them in lieu and we sell them, and years ago POA owned 700 lots and so forth, and what happens? Well, the POA sells these lots, and our main goal, we have two goals. We want to bring in additional revenue, but we also want to find someone that's going to pay the assessments. And maybe they'll build on that lot, and when they build on that lot, they're going to be paying a higher assessment, and maybe they'll buy an activity card. Maybe they get a golf membership, and so forth. So you see, in 2016, we sold a little over 100 lots, 17 over 200, 18 another 200, 19 we sold over 250 lots, and that does not include the 350 lots that we sold during the flash sale. So we actually sold, in 2019, 600 lots. Pretty good. And in 2020, we're having a dip down, but it's still pretty good. We sold over 200 lots. If we could get more, we'd sell more. There's high demand. I think if you go around in our community, you can see construction everywhere. If you have a flat lot, we can sell it. All right, the trailing 12 is a little distorted when we talk about revenue because we have a significant one-time payment from a very large property owner, so that skews it. Normally we're working with a lot of other people and they're smaller size and we're getting a little bit here, but in this case we got a big hit, so it's kind of skewing the numbers and making the trailing 12 really good and the 21 not as good, but it's really one big payment. Also, revenue will decrease by $60,000 due to difficulties in maintaining a sufficient lot inventory. If we can get lots, we sell them. All the lots we have are the ones we have to keep. They have title issues and so forth. We can't sell everything that we have, but everything that is sellable is sold, is done. And in 2020, we were fortunate to have 5 judicial sales. The county limits us to about 25 lots per. We actually went to them and asked them if we could increase that to 100, and they said no. We'd love to do a lot so that we can keep current on all those, because we want to turn them into people that are going to pay their assessments. Labor is going to decrease because we have one gentleman that's going to be retiring, and we anticipate the replacement will not be at that same level, and the overall expenses will remain flat. So you'll see here's that drop in revenue we talked about. Here's that drop in labor that we talked about, and then expenses are pretty flat from one year to the next. Okay, accounting. Page 25 of your packet. You'll see that revenue is going to go down by $77,000. What we've done is we've reclassed this to general income because it just makes more sense to have it in that department. The reporting is better. So you're going to see a drop in this, but if you went back to general income, you're going to see that, although it's going to be hard to see that $77,000 because you have that increase in assessments, but it's in there. Okay, labor is going to go up the 3%, and then we're shifting 2 part-time employees to full-time employees. We are very busy in accounting. We always remember, why do we have so many people in accounting? Well, we have almost 15,000 water accounts, and we have 39,000 land accounts. That's a lot of accounting. Now there's a lot of people that own multiple lots in there, but that's a lot of accounting, a lot of hands-on touching of each account. Expenses will increase by about $10,000 with supplies. We had a lot of people that were working at home, so they weren't using supplies. And then bank charges are going to go up, and we're looking at potentially going out to market and getting competitive bids because our bank fees are going up. So we want to try and we're budgeted at the higher level, but we're optimistic that by going out to market, getting multiple bids, we'll actually be able to push that down. But we'll see when we get the bids in. So here's that drop in revenue because it's been reclassed to general income. Here's that increase in labor we talked about, and the expenses of $10,000. because people are going to be working in the office. All right, member services, we're on page 27. So we wanted to talk about quickly this year, the increases from one year to the next. So you'll see that for activity cards, our activity cards are up 40% over prior year. And if you remember from when I was giving the speeches on the 2020 plan, I thought we'd have about a 10 to 15% increase, and we're at 40%. Consistently all year long, we've been at 40%. That's a 3,800 increase over prior year. Guest passes are through the roof, plus 4,000, and boat registrations, a lot of kayaks. Kayaks are very popular. That's an increase of 20% or 1,000 additional boats and kayaks. And that's, if you look at the activity card increase, it's because of the 2020 plan and the new fee schedule. And if you look at the boat registrations, that's because of the 2020 plan and the new fee schedule. Guest passes, well, when more people are using the amenities, they're bringing more guests. And then COVID is bringing people here because we have so many outdoor-oriented activities. This department processes over $4 million in revenue each year, golf, recreation, so forth. While they don't have revenue in this department, they actually process that much. And they field 40,000 calls a year. Last year, if you listen to me, they fielded 30,000. Because of COVID, we're up to 40,000. Okay? And you see the increases that we talked about. We will continue to operate member services with the doors closed. It's working. People are registering online, or you can do it verbally. You can call them up. They'll work with you. But both of those locations are so small that for COVID reasons, we have to keep those doors closed. But in reality, our website, it's very well automated, and you can do all that online. All right, labor will increase by the 3%. We keep on talking about that. Plus, we have to add additional hours because you see that the activity card sales are just going through the roof and everything else that they're doing. Expenses will go up. Well, when you do more activity cards, you have more expenses related to the cards, the printing, all that. And then because our doors are closed, we have to mail everything. So our postage is up. So you'll see an increase in our expenses. So here's the zero revenue. Don't know what we did, how we made $19 a couple years ago. But you see the labor is going to go up, and you see expenses are also going up. Because that is one very busy department. All right, IT, page 29. Labor will go up by 3%. And for expenses, software maintenance and licensing costs have increased markedly due to employees working at home because of COVID. We went from, I think Jack was telling me, we went from 15 people that would work at home on an occasional basis to 90 people, something like that. I might have overstated that, but because of COVID. So now a lot of those are coming back into the office, but we still have a large number of people working from home. And here you go. So there's all those licenses and so forth. All right, recreation, page 31. Overall revenue will decrease by $68,000 because we've lowered, if you get an activity card for $30, you get free admission into the gym facility. So all that revenue for the gyms, the pools, the beach and so forth, that's been reduced from recreation, and it's basically transferred over to general income and assessments. But you also see that marina, camping, and tiny cabin revenue will increase in the coming year. Labor will increase due to the following: minimum wage increase, so think about lifeguards and marina staff, 3% increase in wages there, and will be operational for 12 full months. We had the gyms closed for months and months. That's going to, now we're anticipating we're going to be open all year long. Inherently, you're going to have more in labor. Expenses will increase due to the following: utilities will increase because we'll be open for a full 12 months. So think of Branchwood. The place was closed for a couple months, the lights were off, so forth. Now it's going to be open. All right, several capital projects for this department. We have the second half of the pickleball courts. The first half is going to hit this year. Second half of the expense is going to hit next year. We also have to do a major amount of work at the Kingsdale Pool, $132,000. We haven't done major work down there in 25 years. We need to purchase an additional, we're going to get it used, a fishing and ski boat for the marina because they are renting. You can't believe how much we're renting out of that place. We're doing very, very well. And we're expanding the tiny cabins because that's another place that we're just killing it. Doing very, very well. Lots of members, lots of guests coming and using those amenities, and we need to expand them. And we're doing very well financially by doing that. So here's that drop in revenue that I talked about where you no longer pay to go into the gym facilities if you have an activity card. That revenue has been transferred over. Here's the labor because we're going to be open for 12 full months. And here's the expenses increases because we're going to be open. So look at the expenses from 19 and compare that to 21. You'll see that it has gone, it's down, but All right, POA. So we just did a whirlwind tour of each individual department, and we're now to the POA. Now, this does not include water. We're on page 33, but we're pulling all those departments together, and this is what they look like all together. So you'll see that revenue went up, and so assessments is one of the big ones that's driving that. That and golf's doing pretty good. Cost of sales is always related when you sell more food and beverage, more merchandise, that's going to go up. Labor, that's a large increase, but we've talked about that with every single department. Minimum wage, the 3%, being operational for 12 full months, and you'll see the expenses have gone down because we're done with closing the two stump dumps. So that really contributed to driving expenses down. But here's the big item. Look at these two, going from 831,000 to the negative to 140 to the positive. That is a tremendous improvement. All right, here's the capital budget. Now we're on page 32 of your packet. So I talked about each one of these in each individual department, and here's all of it combined. So we're at the bottom left and bottom right-hand corner. We'll see almost $900,000 in capital project when you combine all of them together. The first sheet that we saw when we were going through all of the requests, and a lot of these requests came from the committees. A lot of the recommendations came from the Recreation Committee, the Lakes Committee, the Golf Committee, but we had to pare things down. We could only afford so much. So the number was probably twice that, and we had to cut it all the way down to $900,000. All right, now let's talk about water loan, the loan from the water department to the POA, and we got to pay that down. And we borrowed that money to pay off for the Trafalgar fire. Last year, in 2020, the budget, we committed that we'd pay off $280,000, and it looks like we're going to pay, for 2020, we're going to pay off well over $1 million this year. For 21, we're going to anticipate that we're going to pay off that same $280,000, and if things go well in 21, we'll pay off more. Reserve, in compliance with the 2020 plan, we talked about that we would have to have a reserve contribution of $174,000, so that's going to be in the budget also. Now, I always want to talk about how our cash is cyclical in nature. We have periods of the year when we are cash poor and cash rich. And if you look at the last two regular presentations of the board meeting, Stacy, our controller, has actually showed a really clear graph on how our cash increases and decreases at certain times of the year. So we always want to make sure that people are aware that towards the latter portion of the year is when we are cash poor, and that's when we borrow money from the water department. The best comparison to see how we're doing compared to that water loan is when you look at December 31st at year end, compare the year end from year to year to year, and you're going to see that we're constantly improving it. Don't get too muddled into the month to month. You can have some variations. All right, so page 37 of your packet. Here is the cash flow. This is the simple cash flow or the financial budget. And you'll see all the way down at the bottom we have a positive of $95,000. If you recall last year's, we had a very skinny positive, about $6,000 or $7,000. $95,000 is a little skinny for me too. I'd like it a little bit more than that. Have a nice little more of a buffer in case something goes wrong. But all the projects that we need to get done that we weren't able to do this year because of COVID, and we weren't able to do in 19 because of the Trafalgar Fire cutbacks, we have a lot of projects, a lot of maintenance that we need to catch up on. All right, deferred maintenance. So on that same subject, so a best practice for our industry is that you should spend to depreciation. Our depreciation for water is $1.8 million. This year we're going to spend $900,000, just shy of it, so we're going to spend 49.9%. We should spend 100%, but we also have the fire that we're dealing with, the lawsuits and all that stuff. So it's understandable that we can't be at 100%. 50% is not bad, considering that in 19 and 20, the combined average is 23%. Clearly not enough. Okay? The buildings are not going to be able to be maintained at that low level. All right? So while I'm not 100% happy with the 50% this year, it's much better than the last 2 years. And hopefully, if we can get the Trafalgar issue behind us, we can continue to increase that and get to 100%. All right, now we're going to talk about the water utility. This is the last department. We're on page 38. All right, with new home construction just going through the roof, we anticipate revenue will continue to be strong. We added an additional crew, an entire crew, which means the 2 individuals and all the equipment, and I'm going to show you this in just a few minutes, all the additional equipment. We're doing so many installations. We're doing so many repairs to yards because of water leaks and so forth, and repairing water leaks. We're getting pushed back. The customer service is not where it needs to be. We're adding an entire crew. And that's a pretty substantial capital investment. The first year is pretty substantial. It's almost $300,000. But that's a 1-year investment, and then you have the labor going forward. But we have to get it. We talked about at a board meeting, sometimes builders are having to wait 3 and 4 weeks to get their water installed. And we need to lower that. We need to be better. And it's just because there's just so much going on right now. All right, labor will increase by $172,000. We added the 2 additional employees. We have a 3% increase, and we were not at full strength all of last year due to COVID. Once again, when COVID hit, we made major reductions in our expenses across the board. We need to get back to full strength. You'll notice this is one department that does not have an increase that is related to the minimum wage, because all our employees in this department are above minimum wage. All right, expenses will increase $217,000 due to a couple things. When you have more home constructions, you have more supplies, more water meters. You have to buy the water meter to install it and so forth. That goes up. We're planning on hiring a consultant to do a comprehensive master plan for our water system. This could cost us $70,000, but we have not done a comprehensive master plan since '98. We need it, especially with all the growth that's going on. And we had some allocation changes in accounting that were dating back way back in time and really didn't make a lot of sense. We fixed that. it resulted in a cost increase. All right. This is one department that we have some fee changes. You'll notice that pretty much no other department has had any fee changes. Rec has a couple fee changes to our campground for guests. No changes for our members, just for our guests. But water has quite a number because of the sales tax increase that was approved the middle of this year. It's resulted in a 1% increase, and we're passing that along. We're just moving along. The city has charged us more. We're just passing that along. We've been absorbing that expense for the last 4 or 5 months because our fee schedule said this dollar amount. We're updating the fee schedule for the coming year, and these are the only changes. All right, quite a number of capital projects for this department. $500,000 for water main replacement. This is going to be ongoing. We're always going to have to do this. We normally do about $300,000. We're looking to do $500,000 in the coming year. The Lake Avalon tower exterior rehabilitation, got to paint it, got to work on it, make sure that it's in great shape. The added crew, we talked about the $300,000 for the added crew. You'll see that on the bottom, $105,000 for a single axle dump truck, a backhoe, and a service truck. All that a little bit short of $300,000, but you see that it is a significant financial investment to add that crew. Here's some more things. The power vent for the Bethnal Tower, an Enigma I don't even know what that is. $105,000 for a single axle dump truck, the backhoe trailer, a service truck, and a 4x4. All those are replacements. And yes, I do know what the loggers are, but don't ask me to explain it in any detail. It helps you find water leaks. So here you see that, and it's paying off. And you see the increase in labor, we talked about that, and the increase in expenses, and we talked about that. So we're actually, in this department, we're going to go backwards compared to the trailing 12, but actually quite a bit better than here. The big question here is we're accelerating paying it early. It gives us flexibility. So say in 1 or 2 or 3 years, each year, $19. Here's the capital projects. You can see that we didn't spend much in 2019 because we're spending quite a bit. We're doing well. A bit extra, and here's that loan out to the POA. Presentation is available.
So we have no questions at this time. Answer email. Next Thursday at 6 p.m. here in the boardroom is when we will be voting on this budget. The Board of Directors works 9 a.m.